We'll just allow 1 or 2 minutes for people to get into the webinar and then we'll start. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first ever KISS Alumni webinar series. Tonight's webinar is going to be on education. Yeah, be good if my PowerPoint worked. So some housekeeping for tonight's webinar. There will be no chat function on the webinar. Any questions can be submitted through the Q&A tab. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen. And just to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and shared on our YouTube page. I am your host this evening. My name is Alistair Paton and I am the Glasgow Projects Coordinator at the KISS Alumni. I was a 18 and 19 scholar. We have 3 speakers for you tonight. We have Sara Cassidy. She was an apprentice at KPMG. We have Leah Duncan-Karrim, who was a China Bridge contestant, and Grace Paterson, who is a Chinese university graduate. So we'll now just open the floor up to whoever would like to speak first.
Oh, I'm the only one not muted. I guess it's me then. Yeah, so my experience with China started in 2014, where I went on the China Bridge camp, where you spend 2 weeks-ish in Tianjin and Beijing, just kind of getting a taste of the culture and stuff. And from that experience on, I returned back to Scotland, and in my high school, I started studying Mandarin. There was no Mandarin classes in my school at the time, so it was kind of a study period type thing. You know, trying to get through some HSKs, trying to be more involved in a lot of the activities and stuff that they had at home through the Confucius Institutes, things like SCEN, any events that the local institutions were offering. When I was in my 6th year of high school, I then applied for the KISS scholarship. So I spent 2015-16, I was a 2015-16 scholar. I spent a year in a foreign language college in Tianjin, studying language. You had optional classes of types of culture, you know, things like idioms. There was Chinese kung fu classes, you know, just kind of getting a more wide knowledge of China and Chinese language. From there, when I was in my last few months of the scholarship is when I decided I wasn't ready to leave yet, and so I applied to Nankai University, which was also in Tianjin. And since I was a KISS scholar, I was able to, when applying to Nankai, I was able to get a full scholarship from the government here as well. So I've just graduated this year. I spent my first 2 years at Nankai studying Japanese, and my second 2 years were spent studying Chinese language and business. During the time at university, I studied the Chinese history. We do Chinese language and culture. You also do a wide variety of business-related courses, things like computing. There's also mandatory PE. It's just a much wider range of subjects in one degree. So you would study your Chinese language, and all of your classes are taught in Chinese, but you are normally with other foreigners studying Chinese. So then when you get to your 3rd and 4th year, you can kind of start choosing which part of the course you're most interested in. So when I was in my 4th year, I just finished there. I did my dissertation on linguistics. I focused on various factors that influence the way that you perceive your own foreign language ability compared to how your actual ability relates to, for example, exams and on paper. In my university, to graduate, you have to do HSK 6. So at the end of last year, I took my HSK 6 exam, and I graduated in July. I've just graduated in July with my degree. It's called Chinese Language and Culture with Business. My original plan was to continue studying afterwards, but because of the current situation, it's not really been feasible. But because of my language training here and my degree, I am eligible for working visa in China. So the way that my plan is right now, I currently have a job. I'm teaching here for the next year, kind of regrouping, seeing what opportunities are available. And from there, I will either stay on or go back home. The current plan right now is to stay, but it will all depend at the time. So I've been in Tianjin for 5 years now. I'm in Tianjin right now. So it's the middle of the night for me, so I might not be a little bit awake. But yeah, I have just really, really enjoyed my time here. And I've had a lot of really great opportunities. I've been able to meet a lot of really interesting people from all over the world. I've made some great friends, and my language ability has given me the chance to meet Chinese people and talk to them and then get a better understanding of the local culture from them. It's also given me the opportunity to socialize with other foreigners that don't necessarily speak my language and I don't necessarily speak their language. And it has also given me all these opportunities. For example, now I am able to get a job. I have a lot more there's a lot more I could do than I would if I just had maybe a language ability or a degree. I've got both, and so I have really had a great experience here, and I have learned a lot of really interesting things, and I've really fallen in love with the place.
That's really good, Grace. I've got one question for you. Do you think that you would have ended up studying in China or studying in a foreign university if you hadn't taken part in the KISS scholarship?
No, I don't think so. For me, it was, as soon as I learned about the KISS scholarship when I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to apply for that, and that was a real driving factor in a lot of the Mandarin learning and a lot of the events I went to in my 5th and 6th year of high school. And if I hadn't got the opportunity to come out here in the first place, there is no way I would have ever known about the opportunities that there are over here. I would have never even considered the possibility of going abroad. So without that, no, I don't think I could ever see myself having the same life I do now.
Yeah, it sounds really good. So now we're going to pass on to our second speaker of the evening, which will be Leah.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? So my name is Leah Duncan-Karrim, and I was a Tianjin scholar from 2016-17. Our year was slightly different in that we did part of a semester at Tianjin International Chinese College and then a second semester at Tianjin Foreign Studies University. I'm quite similar to Grace in that I started off going on the Chinese Bridge camp and sort of having the Chinese language immersion through that, and realising that when I'd previously studied German, Chinese was something that I'd be interested in pursuing. And then I heard about the scholarship through Grace, who went to the same school as me, because I found out that she'd been accepted. And I thought, well, that sounds like a fantastic opportunity. So mainly I'm here today to talk about what I've done since then. So I'm currently going into my 4th year at the University of Edinburgh studying Chinese. And in the last year I've spent, pre-coronavirus, I spent a lot of time in Beijing at Peking University studying an intensive language course. Previously from that though, so last summer I was selected as the 2nd place finalist from the UK from the Chinese Bridge competition, which meant that I was selected to go and participate at the World Finals in China, which was, for me, it varied depending, but for me it was a 12-day trip, fully covered, very immersive, and we effectively filmed a TV show based around our language ability. We were given cultural immersion. From that, I've had 4 or 5 graduate job offers and people who've said to contact. So it's definitely something I think has made a massive difference to my life and to my language learning. Following on from that as well, after the competition when I was back in Beijing, one of the teachers from KISS recommended me to the World Hanban, or the Chinese Institute. And last year I was named the Outstanding Scholar from the UK, which meant attending the 20th anniversary sort of celebrations, again taking part in a lot of cultural immersion, and led to quite a lot of things. Like I filmed a promotion visit advert video for the Confucius Institute. I took part in a government organised short film, and yeah, there's so many opportunities for learning Chinese, and they're usually not what you'd expect them to be, which is part of the fun. But yeah, that's kind of what I had to say.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So did you find the China Bridge competition nerve-wracking at all, or filming the TV programme? I know it's something I've watched in the past, and it's always been a fun and interesting TV show, but I wondered how you found that as a participant in the TV show.
It was exhausting, but it's one of the best things I've ever done. So in my first year, I applied for the UK final, and I didn't make it into the final because I had some learning to do. But I think it was quite a ride from going through the UK final and having been invited to lunch at the Chinese embassy, to flying out to China and meeting people from quite literally all around the world. I think it was 120 approximately people, everyone from different countries. And yeah, you're basically thrown straight into it. You meet diplomats, and then you also have the whole experiences of going through a TV show as well. And then there's a lot of learning and language acquisition as well.
I know that some of the viewers of the webinar this evening might not be aware of what the China Bridge competition is. Can you explain that a little bit, and can you explain the process from the kind of start to the beginning of what the process is?
So the Chinese Bridge competition is effectively the world recognised competition for Chinese language learners. So the way it works, certainly in the UK, is that you're first nominated by your university. So I was put forward by the University of Edinburgh. I think 7 of us applied and 2 of us went. And then the UK finals, you first compete in the semi-final, and then you compete, if you're selected from the top 10, you go into the final, at which point you're expected to do a 3-minute speech in Chinese, a 3-minute performance of some sort, which could be anything from kwai bar, which are like a Chinese percussion instrument, to poetry, to song, whatever you think represents your Chinese talent. You then also have impromptu questions and a quiz. So those are the UK finals. And if you place between first and third, depending on the year, you go to the world finals, which is held in summer every year in China. And as I say, it's a television show, so you spend the first days doing a lot of intensive filming, places like the Forbidden City in Beijing and Temple of Heaven, lots of very touristy spots, and yeah, sort of cultural activities. And then from there, the competition becomes the world competition, which is done in stages, and 120 goes down to 30 people, and then the 30 goes down to 15 and 5, and then they have the sort of world final, which is considered quite a famous, like quite a well-known show on national Chinese television.
Excellent. So one of the questions I have is, how did the university support you, the University of Edinburgh support you in the Chinese Bridge competition? And
they were wonderful.
And were you nervous or worried at all about that?
No, they were absolutely wonderful. So as I say, I did it twice, and I think it was kind of acknowledged in the first year that I wasn't likely to place, but it was a fantastic experience. But in second year, I had 5 different tutors assigned to me individually. So I was effectively being tutored on average about half an hour to an hour every day, one-to-one, in language, performance. There was a specialist Chinese singing teacher hired. And then they paid for all of the whole trip to London, the hotel, the trains, everything. They were incredibly supportive.
Sounds like a great experience. So we'll now pass over to Sara, who is our third and final speaker of this evening.
Hi, I'm Sara, and just like Grace, I was a 2015-16 scholar. With going to China, it genuinely was a life-changing opportunity and experience. I'm not sure about any of you guys, but I don't know many 17 or 18-year-olds that fly over 5,000 miles away to attend a university and learn in a completely other language. So for me, that was a really big thing. The other main thing that really stands out to me is the opportunity to meet friends from across the globe, many of which that I would say I still keep in touch with, and the people on the scholarship do become like a second family. You rely on them for everything, and it's good because you all feel the same way. You have a support network there of people that do genuinely understand that you're maybe having an off day because you miss home, or you could bounce ideas off each other with studying or homework tasks, which was really good for me anyway. Different to the other two speakers tonight, I didn't go down the generic university route. I applied to KPMG and was awarded a place as one of their accountancy apprentices. So from this, I go around all different parts of the business, so mainly audit, tax and advisory services. And I spend a period of time in each of them, and I then decide the one that I like the best. So for me, I'm now in the process of becoming a corporate tax specialist. It's not as boring as it sounds, and it's actually quite interesting. I have a few more exams left to sit, and they are all number based, which maybe doesn't appeal to everyone, but is really good. One of the main things that the scholarship has given me is the opportunity to be able to not only practice language skills but also accountancy skills. So upon completion of my apprenticeship program, I am aiming to go to China on a secondment and utilise the language skills from the scholarship, but also the accountancy skills that I've developed over time, which is actually, I'm quite looking forward to doing it. Learning Chinese overall, it is quite difficult, but it is a very enjoyable experience, and day by day you learn a few different words or phrases that it becomes almost second nature to you. And for me personally, I think learning Chinese has enabled me to become more confident, not only with speaking to my colleagues at work, but also with the clients that we work with. I feel if I can communicate in Chinese to someone, I surely can communicate with some of our clients. So it has been very beneficial. And in my interview for my apprenticeship, they sort of want to know a little bit about you and your background. And because my background was slightly different from everyone else, I feel this helped going down the employment route. And people that I speak to on a daily basis they're always amazed that at 17 or 18 that you're given such an opportunity to do something like this. I've been working quite closely with the head of restructuring in Scotland, and he's a really big supporter. So when I joined the firm, he reached out, and there's basically a China network. So from this, we help promote Chinese language and culture within the business. We organise events, and also when sometimes we get work comes in, and that involves maybe some translation skills that a lot of people don't have the skills there in Chinese that would be able to translate a document. So that's always an option as well. Yeah, just for me, the scholarship really like, opened many doors, and now the ability to be able to take what I do just now and take that out to China and be able to combine both things that I'm very passionate about is really is a win-win. And for anyone that is thinking about applying or maybe on the fence about applying, I would really recommend that it's definitely the right thing to do.
It sounds like a really different and interesting way to become an accountant. So you said you're choosing corporate tax. Can you tell us why you're choosing corporate tax, or why is that particularly interesting to you?
Corporate tax is an area that I'm very interested in because it allows the ability to work for companies worldwide, and having been so interested in languages like I am, it offers the opportunity to work abroad or work within these companies. And then additionally, the language skills is like they work really well together. And maybe not for everyone, but they worked out quite well for me. So corporate tax and like kind of business and languages are really well suited together.
Yeah, it sounds excellent. So we've got quite a number of Q&A questions, and I think we can answer some of them. So Grace, I think the first question is for you, and it's, why did you choose Nankai University over other universities in China?
So when I was going through the process of choosing universities and applying here, one of the major factors for me was the scholarship I had been offered was a Tianjin only scholarship. It was the Tianjin government that offered me the scholarship. So the first factor was a university in Tianjin, I would get a full scholarship. And so I knew that I wanted to continue to study languages and linguistics and these sorts of things. And a lot of universities in China are very, very specific. So you'll have universities that only do like engineering, certain ones that only do chemistry. Like they split up quite clearly. And in Tianjin, there's only a number of universities that do these sort of language courses and language degrees. And Nankai really jumped out to me when we went on a campus tour of it during our scholarship year. So I'd been to the campus before. It was a really big campus. We'd seen a lot of the courses and the facilities they had, and I knew that I was very interested in it from that time. But once I started applying, I knew that it was the right fit for me. Nankai is thought of as quite a good university in China. And so I really wanted to make the most of the opportunity and have the best experience I could.
That sounds a good reason to choose Nankai. Leah, on the similar note, so why did you choose, for your second time going to China with the University of Edinburgh, why did you choose to go to Beida?
So for me, we had 5 choices. So we could either choose to go to, they're changing them slightly, they're adding in Yunnan, but the choices were Taiwan, Dalian, Hangzhou, Beijing or Shanghai. And they're all very highly ranked universities, all very respected. But for me, I think part of it was that my heart was still in Tianjin from when I'd been there before. And I'd made a lot of friends who I wanted to have the ability to visit, as well as Beida as one of the top 2, arguably the top university in China. So the reputation's obviously there as well.
Excellent. So this is a question maybe for Grace again. How did you feel going from the language college into Nankai? What was the language level jump like?
So when I originally went to Nankai, as I said, I did my first 2 years in Japanese, because when I was at the college, I got my HSK 5 certificate, which was the qualification you needed to study something other than Chinese in university at Nankai. So for my first 2 years of my bachelor, I did Japanese, and this was taught entirely in Chinese with Chinese students and Chinese teachers. So it was a lot, and there was a lot of classes, and I was very, very busy. And It was a really good experience. However, for me personally, it was quite intense, and that is why, because Nankai offers, for most courses, from the first and second year to the third and fourth year, there's the ability to change to something else without losing any of your credits. And so when I finished my second year, I decided that maybe it was time to slow down a bit and go back and really build on my Mandarin ability. And that's why I went back to learn. Since I was in China, I thought it was really worth my while to make the most of the opportunity to learn more about the place I was in, rather than trying to get ahead of myself and learn everything I could. But the college that I spent my third and fourth year in Nankai, the College of Chinese Language and Culture, is everything is entirely taught in Chinese, but it is mainly just international students, so foreigners whose mother language is not Chinese, learning Chinese and culture, and there's a lot of business classes there. They're focusing on more business heavy degrees these days. But that college in Nankai was very, very similar to the teaching style of the college. You know, the class kind of layouts were the same. They had some similar materials, obviously at a different level. But yeah, from going from the college to a degree taught entirely in Chinese with local Chinese students, that was very intense. However, taking a step back and studying Mandarin as my full-time degree, of course it wasn't easy, but it was a really good experience. It wasn't too much or too overwhelming.
Great. So a few of you spoke about the KISS China Bridge summer camp. Would one or two of you like to elaborate on that and maybe tell us a bit more about your experience on the summer camp and maybe why that led you to the full scholarship?
So I'll say a little bit about that, and Grace can expand on it. I don't know, Sarah, if you went as well. So the camp is a trip that's offered to students whose schools are Confucius hubs between 5th and 6th year, and it's largely subsidised by the Confucius headquarters and KISS. And it basically, well, certainly the year I went was a 17-day immersion. So we did about a week in Beijing and the rest of the time in Tianjin, learning a basic introduction to Mandarin, visiting a lot of the large sites, and basically having a bit of a crash course in what it was to study and get to know China.
And do you think that impacted in your decision in choosing to apply for the scholarship and choosing to go on the scholarship?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So Grace was the year above me at school, so I knew the scholarship existed before, and I was determined I was going on the bridge camp. And I think after doing that, it completely changed what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to do German international relations, and the more I learned about China, the more that wasn't quite the right fit anymore.
Great. Anyone else want to add some input about the summer camp?
Yeah, I was similar. I hadn't really heard all that much about the Confucius hub in my school before, but because it was still fairly new when I was there, but because I did higher German in 5th year, it was brought to a lot of the higher language students that there was this trip. And it was one of those things that I was like, oh, this is an interesting opportunity. Let's see what happens. And it was really one of those things. It was the same as Leah said. You do a lot of sightseeing. You do some crash language courses. You taste some food. You know, and you met all these people from across Scotland who had different experiences with Mandarin and different stories. And it really was a big factor for me. I remember the first thing I said to my mum when I got back off the plane was, I want to go back. And she had to go, well, I'm going to not take offense to that. So I think if it hadn't been for that opportunity, I probably would have been down a different path as well, because Mandarin had not been something I'd really considered up until that point.
Great. So another question here is I'm sure all of you can answer it. Do we need to take Mandarin as a subject to be able to get the scholarship? Does anybody want to answer that? I know it's a pretty simple answer.
No, I don't think that there's any prerequisite requirement as far as I know. Most of the scholarship year is you kind of go and you start from zero and you build your language ability up once you get there. And that's part of the fun, is kind of learning it all together and seeing who likes which part and which word. And
Good, yeah. So you don't need there's no prerequisites to go on the KISS scholarship. All you need is to be a member of a hub school. Another question is, what advice would you give to anyone thinking about applying for the scholarship?
Do it.
Anyone thinking about applying for the scholarship, I think the main bit of advice would be just go for it. Like applying for anything is a nerve-wracking experience, but even if you weren't to get it, it's great interview prep, it's great experience, and if you were to be successful, it will generally be one of the best things that you do. For me, when I found out about the scholarship opportunity, I thought, no, like, I'm not moving to China. And then one of the teachers said, like, why are you not applying? You've nothing to lose. So I then applied, and then I went through the interview process and was successful. And on reflection, it's one of the best decisions that I'd ever made. It really helps you grow as a person. You mature in ways that you don't really know is possible. You've not got your mum there or your dad, or really any family members there to be like, to sort of hold your hand and put you through it. You have to do it on your own. You do have the support of the other scholars, which is great, but it will genuinely be one of the best things that you do. So if you are on the fence, the one piece of advice I would give you would be just go for it.
Yeah, I think I would fourth that advice after everybody else. Just go for it. Another question is, what is the best thing you've gotten out of the scholarship other than language ability? So apart from your language skills, what have you?
I would say for me, it is the independence I've kind of gained. I'm not meaning like independent from my family or being able to do my own washing. It's kind of like I find myself very rarely being daunted by new things, and I feel a lot braver, and I have this kind of confidence in my own ability. And it does kind of stem from, you go to this new place and you kind of just have to figure it out. You either sink or swim kind of thing, and you've got support and you have people with you, but at the end of the day, it's kind of up to you what you make of it. And so you kind of learn to just go with the flow and be able to take care of yourself. And I think for me, that's been a fantastic skill to have. And that's the reason why I've been able to stay here so long and do all of these things I never thought I'd be able to, is because I have this confidence and this self-assurance that I would never have gained if I hadn't had that experience and the scholarship to begin with.
Anybody else got anything that they've gotten out of the scholarship? Sara or Leah?
So I would agree with what Grace said. I think there's something very empowering about learning Chinese, because it does give you so many opportunities and it opens up a lot of the world that you didn't think was there before. I mean, I've been in France and I don't speak French, and I got by because because there were a lot of local Chinese residents. But the other thing for me is the relationships that I've gotten out of it. So some of my closest friends, some of them from 4 years ago when I first went on the scholarship, are still a huge part of my life.
Sounds good. Sara, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with what both the girls have said, but also the ability to meet people from elsewhere in the world. Even though you're sort of in China, you learn a lot about that culture, but you also learn about other cultures, and you meet friends from like all over. And I think that's really beneficial because it sort of makes you even more like open-minded about things, and you truly understand what's going on in maybe different countries, or you maybe find out that from speaking to someone, oh, I actually would be quite interested in learning that language, or be quite interested in visiting that country, and I think it just opens many doors for each individual.
Great, yeah. The scholarship is a really great opportunity, and it definitely opens a lot of doors. So I think all of you have talked about your international friends you've made through the scholarship. And one of the attendees is asking if you can give an example of how you've made international friends, or an international friend in particular that you've made that you'd be happy to share.
So,
Go ahead.
so my bridge competition speech was actually about one of my friends from when I was in China the first time, and I got tonsillitis. I went to China with no prior language ability, and yet a friend I made took me to the doctor. She took me to the pharmacy, and basically did all the stuff that I wouldn't have had the ability to do by myself, and just through asking. So I think part of it is finding out that people are willing to help you and be there for you. You don't have to speak the same language. She's now one of my closest friends.
Yeah, excellent. Sarah or Grace, do you have any experiences making friends that you'd like to share?
I mean, for me personally, as I mentioned, where I spent the last 2 years studying is kind of all international students together learning Mandarin. And so my classmates are like, there's people from Korea, Japan, Thailand, Italy, Russia, Poland, America. I've met people from more countries than I could probably name. And some of them speak English, some of them don't. And it's the weirdest experience. One of my best friends is a girl from Korea who doesn't speak a word of English, and we talk every day just in Chinese. And you meet people from all over, and you learn the similarities between certain cultures and the differences, and there isn't really that much of a language barrier when you meet these people. So it's really, really interesting to come this far across the world and not be limited to the people that you can talk to, and to have all these new experiences with people from new cultures that you probably wouldn't have met otherwise.
Sarah, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I really agree with what Grace just said about not like some of the opportunities that are given to meet new people that maybe without scholarship or being out in China that you wouldn't have had elsewhere. I know myself and a few of the people in my scholarship, we came across an Australian family who actually invited us all out to visit them. So that was, I mean, I haven't been myself yet, but I wouldn't rule it out. And we do still regularly keep in touch, which is really nice. So, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, sounds like you've all made a good variety of friends from all over the world. A question from Eva. How did your Mandarin improve over the scholarship? So from the start to the beginning, what was the difference? Anybody?
So when I first went out, I think I had HSK2 or HSK3, I don't really remember. And it was the kind of thing where I'd just been learning the vocab words on the list to pass the test, and I kind of got out here and I had this shock of like thinking I could speak some Chinese. And on my first week, I remember having an absolute nightmare trying to ask somebody where a bus station was, just because I didn't know how to fit all these words I'd learned together. And I think the biggest thing that helped my language ability improve was the fact that in our class it was all just other foreigners learning Chinese. And I think one of the biggest things for especially my year was there was a lot of students from like Thailand in our college who didn't speak any English. And so we spent all these months speaking broken Chinese back and forth to each other and not really understanding what the other person meant, and then having to learn the new words because you needed to communicate to your friends something, and hanging out with them, and just kind of having to force yourself to speak. And by the end of it, I mean, I got my HSK5 within that year, and I've never really struggled holding a conversation in Mandarin ever since. So, I mean, for me personally, it came on leaps and bounds. It went from essentially nothing to being able to talk pretty easily without having any problems.
Leah or Sarah, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, so I went to China with quite literally no Mandarin ability. I think I got there and I was like, I can remember how to say taxi. Great. Wasn't useful. But no, I by the end of the year I got HSK4. And a bit of a funny story. The first weekend that we got there, we were invited to an event in Beijing. And I remember asking someone who was a returning scholar how to get to the train station because we didn't have that language ability yet. And I remember looking back at it, at the instructions months later, and it quite literally just said Wochojan, which is train station. Didn't specify where. But it's the things like that of being able to look back and go, it was such a simple thing. But to be able to understand that and to be able to have fluent conversations came on massively.
Sarah, how did your Mandarin progress over the scholarship?
Just like Grace said, it does come on leaps and bounds. For me personally, just like Leah, I didn't have much ability. I mean, I could say, hi, my name is, and that was a struggle. That was quite a difficult sentence to get out. But I think the willingness to learn is the main thing. So once you get there and realising that you just don't really know what's going on, or when we got there, we had to go to the supermarket and get like a duvet cover. I don't think I've had a more difficult experience trying to buy a duvet cover than that first the first few days. We had the Pleco, the online dictionary, trying to duvet cover, and or even asking for a tea bag. That was a big difficult as well. But looking back, you can almost just sit back and think these things were so difficult at the time. But if I were to be asked now to go and get a duvet cover or a tea bag, like when I was due to leave there, it would have been like second nature. I wouldn't probably even have had to think about it. So yeah, I would definitely say that your Chinese comes on massively. You're fully immersed within there. You've got signs in Chinese every day. You hear people speaking Chinese. Your lessons are taught in Chinese. Everything around you is Chinese. So because of the immersion there, I think that really does help.
Yeah, great. The next question is from Anonymous. I'm studying for HSK5 and finding it difficult and a big jump from 4. Do you have any tips? Any tips for HSK5?
HSK5, I didn't actually do HSK4, so I am aware that it is a big jump though. HSK5 for me, I would recommend, there's a book of past papers online, and it's just it's the official Hanban one, I think. And for me, my best way of studying for HSK is to just the same way you would do, like, first of all, you got to have your background of like watch lots of Chinese TV dramas and films with Chinese subtitles and stuff, try and immerse yourself in it more. It's not so much worth your time of learning all of the words, but I do recommend you get the past paper book and do the first few of them just in your own time, highlighting any words you don't know, learning what they mean, make sure to pay attention to words that come up a lot. And then for the last couple of papers, make sure you do it all timed, because one of the hardest parts of HSK for me anyway is the time limit on everything. So I think it's more useful to practice the way the exam works than it is to just learn all the words off by heart. But you need to have that kind of background of, practicing your language every day, and even if it's just watching something in Chinese with the Chinese subtitles to get yourself used to how the language is kind of structured.
Anybody else have any advice for HSK5?
So I actually haven't done HSK5, and the reason being that I did all the prep work for it and decided to go straight to 6 because this was just before I moved to China last time. But what I would say is don't stress about it. I went to China on my scholarship year 3 years ago, and I probably would have said to you this time last year that I wasn't ready to sit 5. So, and now I'm just about to sit 6. So take your time and don't stress about it. Find some native speakers to speak to and make sure you're using it. But don't mislead yourself into thinking that HSKs are the only sign of your language fluency, because they're not.
I think that's a really good answer. I mean, there is a lot of resources out there and you can spend a lot of time trawling through them, and they can not be very helpful sometimes. So this is a question specifically for Sara. Why did you decide not to go to university?
Well, for me, I think I'm more of a hands-on learner. You know, I just prefer to be actually doing the job or actually doing the thing that I'm learning about, rather than sitting in the classroom and learning about it. I do still attend a university, but I do it in a different way. So I go on like block release from my work, and then after that I have a period of time in between. It's usually about 3 to 4 weeks where I'm still working, but I'm studying for my exams, and then I sit my exam at the end of that, and so on. So yeah, I think that the main thing was I prefer, I'm a hands-on learner. I think that's why being actually in China also helped with the language skills, because you're actually doing it and you're doing it every day. And the same applies with this. Like for example, just now I'm working in I work within a global mobility team, so we deal with a lot of people from overseas or coming to the UK. Had I been at university, would I be able to jump in and know what I'm doing straight away? Probably not. Did I know that at the beginning? No. But being able to work through things and actually do it hands-on and work with more senior members of the team, you do genuinely learn from trial and error, really. But yeah, just for me, I'm a very hands-on learner, and that was the reason why I did it this way.
Excellent. So a question specifically for Leah. What was the hardest part of the China Bridge competition?
I think for me, the part was, so going from the University of Edinburgh, we're coming back from a scholarship. I went into advanced Chinese course, and I was in that throughout university. So I had kind of gone, well, my Chinese level's quite fluent, I'm very happy with this. And I was becoming slightly complacent in my learning. And the hardest part for me, I think, was going there and realising that there's always something to learn. There is always more to study, and there's always more to do, and that's most of the fun of it.
Excellent. So another question here. Do you have any advice you would give to returning alumni, returning scholars?
Please don't lose your Chinese. There are a lot of initiatives. There's a subcommittee in Edinburgh and Glasgow through the KISS alumni. We will have events. If you don't think there's something that's right for you, please reach out to us, because we're very dedicated to making sure that there are opportunities available for continued language learning. And it might not seem immediately, but it will be invaluable to you in the future.
Yeah, so Leah is my other half. In a way, she is the Edinburgh projects coordinator, so she deals with all the events from Edinburgh, and I deal with all the events for Glasgow. Anybody else have any advice for returning scholars?
I never really returned, so I don't really know what I can say on the subject. But if anyone ever comes back out, let me know. I'll probably be here forever.
Yeah, I would just say, don't let your language levels drop. You worked hard to get to where you were before you came home, and don't lose it. It's one of those things, isn't it? If you don't use it, you lose it, and it's really worthwhile.
Yeah. A question here. Do you have any tips for learning Mandarin, especially for the writing part?
Writing, I have only ever learned it by just writing the character over and over again until you kind of get it. But you do find that once you are more comfortable with the language, like I find myself now when I see new Chinese characters, I'm so kind of used to the structure of characters, that I'll see a character and go, oh, that character is made up of this character and that character and this character, and then it's easier to kind of remember and write. At the beginning, it's just a kind of slog of getting used to the different writing style, but once you kind of break through that first step, then you find yourself just naturally getting more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Anybody else have any advice for writing Chinese characters?
If you're really struggling, this is something that I know worked for a lot of people. I was quite similar to Grace in like rote learning, but you can also go through radical lists, and if you can learn the basic meaning of radicals, you can guess what a character is with a lot more accuracy, and it also makes it easier to remember the parts of it.
Sarah, do you have anything to add about writing? Or
I just agree with both of them saying rewriting them. Just like I think back to when I was in primary school and you're learning how you're spelling words and what is it? Look, read, write, cover and check. And it's just the same thing. So try and do it and then keep sort of test yourself. Don't always have maybe them out and copy them all the time. Maybe if you think of some new characters that you've learned, try and write them down and see how well you're getting on with it.
That's good advice. Actually, treat it as if you're a school child again. I like that. A question from Max: What is the KISS alumni, and what can they do for me? If somebody wants to answer that.
Do you want to answer that, Alistair?
I think I'll answer it. Yeah. So the KISS alumni is all the returned scholars. So all the scholars who came back from the scholarship are automatically members, and we run social and networking events to allow scholars to network amongst themselves in a situation like this, or to network with other Chinese companies and businesses, and basically help people in any way we can. Yeah. Grace, a question for you. Did learning Chinese help with your Japanese and other speakers? Has Chinese helped you with other languages if you did other ones?
So the most obvious thing, Chinese and Japanese share a lot of the same characters. So there was that nice little bonus at the beginning where I already knew the meaning of a lot of characters. Obviously they're pronounced differently, but there's a lot of crossover in a lot of Eastern Asian languages like Japanese, Korean, Chinese. Once you kind of get a lot of the foundation of it, it's easy to kind of guess meanings of other things. But I think what helped me the most was just that I was already into this mindset of how to kind of learn a language, or how I am good at learning a language. And so not so much that the languages were similar, but the fact that I knew what it took for me to kind of understand what I was doing with this new language I had to start with. And now I'm kind of in the same groove with Japanese as I am with Chinese. You know, I practice talking to people as much as I can. I practice writing it as much as I can. I try and immerse myself in it, you know, watching TV shows or films, or just trying to find opportunities to communicate with others and, you know, practice and improve my ability. But I think it all comes from that mindset.
Leah or Sarah, has Chinese helped you in any way learn another language?
I think for me it was the opposite. So yes, it has, but for me it was kind of the opposite in that I did German, and I think I started doing German in primary school, and Chinese really taught me how to learn languages, because I never really, I guess I don't remember consciously having to learn German. Whereas for Chinese, starting from the beginning, having that foundation of this is how you study, this is a good way to work, this is what works for you, has been really useful in learning like basic Japanese, a bit of French, works in progress.
Excellent. Okay, so the last question we have time for is, do you have any recommendations of what to watch to improve my listening skills? My year abroad is cancelled and I'm worried about not improving as much. So any TV or movie recommendations I think the person's looking for?
I would recommend going on Netflix and just typing in Chinese or something. I found it quite helpful when I took time out of school and I was home for a while. they have a lot of these like really, really cheesy rom-coms and stuff, and I'm not saying that they're good. However, the language they use is just like the same as you will hear people talking on the street. It's so natural, and it's not, if you watch a lot of these like, you know, like ancient dramas and stuff, you're going to come across a lot of the more technical stuff that you won't really need conversationally. But for me anyway, I found that if you put on one of those kind of like set in the present day kind of cheesy romance things, put on the Chinese subtitles instead of English, it just stopped me from forgetting. You know, it was a really good way to be like, oh yeah, that's the order you put those words, and that's how they would say that. I remember now.
Anybody else got any recommendations?
I'm quite happy to write up a list of various sort of websites and apps and things I could recommend. I would need a bit of time to put that together. But yeah, there's Netflix, there's a huge amount of content on YouTube, a lot of Chinese films, a lot, particularly older films, that are available to watch openly there. There's also, there's kind of a Chinese version of Netflix as well, which is really good, and would recommend that.
Sarah, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, definitely Netflix. Just like Grace said, like, yeah, the films maybe aren't the best, but you might get a good laugh at them, and it also helps with just listening, and probably subconsciously you pick up more than you actually realise, which is really beneficial too.
Excellent. Yeah, I would definitely, I'm more of a TV person myself, and I would recommend the app Viki, Viki, which is really good. It's got like everything you could possibly think of Chinese. It's good.
Sorry, just while I think about that, there's an app that if you're in higher education and your higher education has a subscription to it, you can also download for free with your university account. It's called Movie, but they have different films every week, and there's always something that's Chinese. So if you fancy a bit of random selection, that's something I'd recommend.
Excellent. So that's the end of our webinar today. Just a few kind of last things we want to say before we leave. If you'd like to become a KISS scholar in the future, or you're interested in knowing more about the scholarship, you can find out more at the Confucius Institute for Scottish Schools social media pages and websites. Their social media is at KISS Strathclyde on Instagram and Twitter. And you can email them at kissinfo@strath.ac.uk, and the website is there. And the KISS alumni, you can contact us via @KISS alumni for our YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think we're on everything. LinkedIn as well. There's our email if you want to get in contact with us, if you want to know more about the scholarship or anything that's been said today. And there's the email address, the web address to get our website. This is the first of a series of webinars, and there will be a webinar next week and the next again week. Next week's webinar is on jobs, and we have 3 speakers. We have Natalie Hodgkins, Connor Chloe, and Cameron Smythe speaking about jobs next week. We appreciate everybody coming today to our webinar, and we hope to see you again next week.